Here we are between two sprints. I'm your host, Matt Thomas, joined by my co-host, Adam Rolfe, aka Speed Farm, and the guest of honor today, Ryan Petersen, assistant strength and conditioning coach for the Chicago Bulls. How are you doing today? And then we will get into it.
I'm great. Yeah, happy to be here. Should be a good time.
Fantastic. So between two sprints, like I said earlier, had to show it off, this fancy feature of this software. But Ryan is coming up on year one in the NBA with the Chicago Bulls. Well, also, let's take a step back. I'm the only one who's not a doctor here. I don't know how I feel about that. We got two DPTs in the house, but I'm excited to learn more about Ryan's kind of background, kind of blending the S&C and the physical therapy kind of rehab side. I know that you kind of handle more of the performance RTP. It's a two-man staff with you and Matt Voss, but kind of blending performance and rehab kind of with your background, S&C, PT, all that good stuff. So let's get into it. What got you into the 1080 sprint? What was your first exposure? What got you most interested in it and kind of pushing you over the edge to getting a unit? We'll start there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you mentioned my background as a physical therapist in rehab, and it was kind of a winding road to get to professional basketball and just to high level sport in general. So, for the first 6 years of my career, I'd never heard of the 1080, and a lot of times I was working with populations that it didn't really apply to. It was general outpatient orthopedic PT, knee replacements, back pain, neck pain, rotator cuff repairs. And so I kind of, each new job that I took, it was intentional to get to a more athletic population and seek out performance internships, performance mentors, and eventually kind of got my way to the U.S. ski team in Salt Lake and University of Utah football with their strength staff. So that was the last 3 or 4 years of my career kind of pivoted to the performance side that I enjoyed in the kind of end stage return to play that I was doing with the general outpatient population, and was fortunate to have some connections in right place, right time to get in those rooms that were more performance oriented. So my first, I guess I saw and heard of 1080 when I was with Utah football, and we didn't have any, but just talking to some peers and practitioners in college football that were using 1080. I saw Matt Rhea use it at Alabama. They use it at BYU. So just some kind of on the sidelines uh, observation of how it was being applied there. And then when I got to the Bulls and teamed up with Matt, he has a really strong track and sprint background, and they had used 1080 at Oregon when he was there. And then the US ski team had the Sprint One and a Quantum at their facility in Park City. So really just the last 12 months, 16 months since I've been here with the Bulls is when we got one last summer. So kind of learning on the fly of where it applies, where it doesn't apply, and just know that we're kind of scratching the surface on what it can do and what we hope to do with it here.
I was gonna say if my timeline, aka me stalking your LinkedIn, serves me correct, I guess your first exposure hands-on was the synchro at US Ski, right?
Yeah, and honestly, I saw it in the building, but my role with them was purely medical. So, and it was on the road. So I was just traveling as a physio with their teams. So I really didn't use anything in the Center of Excellence in Park City. So, yeah, didn't even get to it till we got to Chicago.
Didn't bring the sinker on the road with you.
No,
So
man, we were rocking mini bands and mini bands in the
so
ski
so
lodge in Austria.
I feel like that's a similar kind of journey and background where it's like high level sport. You're becoming a better practitioner and you get anecdotes and you're starting to develop your philosophy. You know what the 1080 is, but you never got your hands on it. So because you were a decent amount already into your career, right? And you were familiar ish with what it did, could you take us through maybe like the first 1, 3, 6 months and just that process of, okay, cool, now I have it. And now I just have to figure out what to do with it instead of like just observing from a distance. If you remember how that first, hands-on period went.
Yeah, for sure. So in the observation, it was all about profiling speed, how they were doing it in Alabama and BYU that I had seen was in, I don't even know what it was, but I assume low velocity profiling on these guys to find what load that they needed to target acceleration, transition, max velocity, whatever it was. And at the time, I don't think I had the like nomenclature understanding to appreciate it, but that's what I'm assuming that it was, knowing a little bit more now. And then getting to the bowls where, top end speed isn't quite, the KPI for us. And it was how can we use this right now with the team that we have, with their limitations, injury history, their KPIs, uh, to make it as beneficial as possible. So, you know, first time turning it on, it was trying to understand like resisted sprint, assisted sprint, change of direction, open training, isokinetic reps. Like, should I use any of them? Should I use all of them? And since we're using it both like locomotively and for more like isolated single joint work, we used what I use the most: change of direction, and then either reps or isokinetic. Those would probably be the three that we use most often, with resisted sprinting probably being that fourth. We did more this early off season. So initially, just trying to figure out what this thing was, what the different modes did, how could we apply it today with our the KPI performance guys and the kind of chronic tendon issue guy that we want to just get some eccentric overload on a knee extension, but we don't have cables on the road, but we'll travel this and we could use it. So trying to be creative. And then as we've gotten more comfortable and got the Windows computer to hook up and get guys' profiles, we started some early load velocity acceleration profiles and some 505 testing profiles on guys last off season. Not really applying it yet, but just starting to get the process down and gather some data to hopefully use that next year.
Ryan, as a PT, when you get the isokinetic or the reps apps, right? So the reps app is specific to doing like more power type exercises or anything that's explosive. The isokinetic is speed restricted, right? So think of a BTE or another kind of Cybex or isokinetic dynamometer device. When you started using that, could you give us some examples of maybe as a PT what you're using in the chronic cases or some acute injuries that maybe are coming back that now return to play using that feature of the device? I'm interested to just learn more because we get a lot of questions about isokinetic from rehab professionals.
Yeah, I think the kind of the two most common applications, one would be an eccentric overload, unilaterally without having to go like a two up, one down, or add plates or add weight to something mid rep. So, set a concentric that you can comfortably achieve full range and then have them resist the eccentric overload, for all the eccentric benefits that you get from that and just the ease of doing it with one machine. We probably do that the most, from kind of a injury management chronic lens. And then the isokinetic would be more for just trying to really ramp up neural drive concentrically against something where we can hold the speed again to what they can tolerate symptomatically. If someone's inhibited for the knee for patellar tendonitis or PFP or something, and load is irritating, but we can get good neural intent concentrically against a fixed speed. Guys seem to respond really well to that.
And are you doing that primarily like knees, hips? Like what are some use cases that you're using the isokinetics in?
Knee the
Yeah.
most.
Knee, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
knee the most. Both knee extension and knee flexion, and then probably hip abduction would be the next one that we've used it the most with, and then transitioning to using it more with hamstrings.
Heck yeah. So I liked how you laid out the process of, okay, cool. So what do we need it to do or like support us? And as you said, there's all, assisted, resisted, COD. It's like, well, let's just start with what we actually like need it for. Let's learn how
Mhm.
to dial in those things, eccentric overload, isokinetics, and then let's figure out the rest later or when we like kind of need it. So next, kind of going from more kind of chronic stuff to more performancy or more kind of acute stuff. I'd love to dive into kind of COD next. I know when I when I stopped by that was one of the main chats we had, whether it was like ADA and D cell or how to set up a 505, 1005. So although you guys are still in the learning process, and it definitely takes longer than you think,
For sure.
people think it just like clicks like that, but like it takes, multiple years to figure out your process and the flow and et cetera, et cetera. So COD wise, whether it's just ideas you're super excited to dive into in the off season, or maybe it's the first little like light bulbs or anecdotes from the stuff that you kind of have done COD wise. Could you kind of share what you've been cooking up with that, whether it's anecdotal that you've done or kind of you're excited about a little bit more theoretical?
Yeah, for sure. What we use COD for the most day to day is in our pregame, just as kind of a multi-direction, uh, overloaded kind of potentiating stimulus that you get from a sprint band or a drag band, but you can actually watch them and coach it and not be constrained to running behind somebody on the court. So we really like it for that, whether it's lateral or sagittal plane, acceleration, deceleration, changing the concentric versus eccentric load, depending on the guy and depending on kind of the theme of that pregame, whether we want it to be more eccentric or more concentric power focus. So the versatility of the load and the fact that we can step back and coach it while they're performing it is great. So that's kind of our most consistent use case. And then the testing and the 505 and ADA stuff that you'd come and helped us with, the what we've collected the most on would be a 505 with light resistance, and just kind of matching that up with our unresisted 505 to see if guys are drastically different with some resistance. And then we like to profile a light, medium, heavy 505 to see kind of where guys fall and if it's worth just training unresisted or light resistance, or if guys are really getting buried on one side or the other coming out of a cut. And then to have that as a return to play KPI that we can kind of functionally test and have some more objective numbers than just GPS data. So and I think we're in a good place with the 505 for sure. And that'll probably be our first one that we really dive into and try to build out. Um, and then extend to an ADA would be the next one.
But let's take a step back. I'm super interested as we've actually started to hear this a little bit more where athletes are using this kind of pregame. And I think
Mhm.
that's an underrated kind of function where, yes, you do get all of the data and so much kind of depth, but it's just a smooth, repeatable stimulus, right? You can set, 70% eccentric overload and it's the same every single time. Or you can set it and forget it and you can just watch and be a coach, not having to like yourself not fall over holding them back with a band, right? So
Yep.
could you take me through if you had a player 10 minutes pregame and they really enjoy this, like is it 2 D cells, 2 sprints, and 2 slides each way? What are kind of the loads? Or could kind of share kind of what that game day pregame kind of setup is?
Yeah, and for all the reasons you just mentioned is why we like to use it, and we kind of work off themes and rotate them through. So if it's if we're going to pair it with our split stance overcoming ISO into the pins, we might do a linear decel and re-excel, that kind of similar shapes and similar vectors that we're potentiating and then applying with some resistance with the 1080. And what I like so much about it is it just gives such good feedback on position. So even beyond like the resistance and that they're having to work against, if you're trying to coach, you got to sink your hips in and out of a cut, back yourself and be efficient. If you have an extra 12 kilos pulling your center of mass, if you're not sitting into a hip in a good position, it's going to reveal that to you very tangibly. And athletes can feel that and then self-organize and get into better positions, whether or not they're, projecting and creating force, whatever. Let's get them into good positions in and out. And I think they really like to feel that. And then there's just the increased kind of effort that you have to give to get out of those positions. So back to how we'd use it again, it's going to be on a theme. And we might hit 3 rounds of 4 to 6 reps in each direction, whether it's lateral, right side, left side, or linear, just forward to back on an acceleration or a deceleration, or we'll do reactive stuff with, calling cones or calling colors or calling numbers, to layer some cognitive task onto it. Um, but typically, yeah, I'd say 3 to 6 reps in each direction, for the majority of our guys. And if we're working on certain positions, we might slow it down and coach it up a little bit more, on how am I dealing with this additional load into a position that we want to focus on a little bit more.
Heck yeah, I like the themes and the microdose and it'll rotate and transition to keep it fresh, but also keep the stimulus actually kind of working. And then also it just supports what you guys are doing. If it is this pregame potentiation, cool. Let's pair with our like weight room overcoming ISOs and the portability of the sprint and et cetera, et cetera. But hopefully the next Bulls game I go to, I'll see it on court pregame. That'd be epic.
Yeah, we tried that out preseason this year, and we just didn't find a great rhythm yet. And we know other teams do it too. But there's so much going on, whether it's like dance team practicing or like the anthem practicing, and the other teams has half court shooting, and we have 2 or 3 guys and PD staff, and so we haven't found the sweet spot to get the cable out there without tripping somebody. But we've tried it, where it's in the works.
There's a lot of people on the court, if you're conscious of, because I always try to like find you and Matt, obviously. And yeah, like so many people at half court, and the refs are even doing their bands and their slides and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
That's where we need to go next, is just help out the officials, right? They're doing their warm up. Let them have a little potentiation. Hook them up.
All right. So last kind of question now, moving forwards to future-ish, although there was some foreshadows, come the off season, now that you have almost a full year in the NBA under your belt, what are the 1 to 2 things, whether it's your own experiments on yourself as you're your own best guinea pig, or you're excited to get like some actual data on your athletes? What are the 2 things that you're most excited about diving into, whether it's something you've already done, just more, or something kind of new this upcoming offseason?
Yeah, I think like we mentioned, I think that 505 or 88, whatever one we really decide to go all in on, but some flavor of change of direction profiling and seeing, the guys that we classify as good movers on the court, and high performers on the court, what do they look like in this task, in this drill, and how can we use this to inform our training to improve transfer into change of direction and XL decel on the court. The second one would be, and this is just kind of top of mind because I saw somebody post about the broad jump profiling that's coming out. We always talk about the horizontal versus vertical director, and Adam, this is probably in up your alley of how effectively do we produce horizontal force, regardless of our magnitude of force we can produce in the weight room. If that's lost in physics or mechanics or positions, it's not always easy to quantify that beyond just a broad jump distance. So looking forward to throwing that into our battery and seeing if it's more informative than vertical jumping, to, again, who is performing well on the court, what are some of those qualities, what do we see with a load profile on a broad jump, and is that something we can tie back into our pregame potentiation, or just our KPIs on what do we think is more important for how they produce force in a constrained task, and then how does it transfer onto the court.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think one thing that we talked about as a team at 1082 is looking at just lateral horizontal jumps, and think ankle sprains when they're coming back, to have that data and baseline testing. But also notice when you're going into change of direction testing, like you're already doing, is there fundamentally a place to also put just a single leg lateral jump right and left, because they may just not have that explosiveness, and then you can do a low velocity profile. And I know I'm getting in the weeds here, but that helps you guide how you might want to train that as well. Because you're doing so many vertical things. Let's get these other planes of movement put into the base, right? And just, we didn't used to think of things that way because we couldn't test it. We didn't see it as important, and now we can, and we can also train it. So I'm glad you're thinking that way. We're always trying to innovate, give you tools to use your knowledge and get after it.
Yeah, that's a great point. When the lateral ankle sprains are, I think, the number one time loss in the NBA, and for that inside leg, horizontal, single leg lateral jump, that's pretty specific vector for what force with on the lateral ankle.
Yeah, I love tying it back to sport where I always think it would be interesting if you had the coaches like rank like who's the best movers, right? And then you saw how related, the sprint testing, the COD testing, the lateral testing to like the coach kind of rank, or you and Matt kind of as also the resident kind of movement experts. But you have jump stuff, you have linear sprinting and decel and COD, and then you have lateral stuff. So the world is your oyster, and I'm excited to follow along with what you cook up. So thank you very much for your time. Now is your opportunity. I'll roll out the red carpet to shamelessly plug, emphasis shameless. Where can the listener get more of Coach Ryan Petersen if they want to dive in?
Oh man, that's a great question. I'm on LinkedIn. I don't know what my handle is. I know my Instagram handle is Ryan Petersen PT underscore. You can probably look up my LinkedIn. It's Ryan Petersen, SEN.
And then if you
Yeah,
just
Ryan
type in Ryan Petersen
SEN.
Bulls, that's how I found it.
Yeah. That'll show up. I'm not super active on there, so this will be one of the few things that might be tied to it. But always happy to engage in messages or meet new smart people. So
Fantastic. So Ryan, Adam, thank you very much for your time, and I'm looking forward to the next one.
yeah, thank you guys.